Welcome back to Dear Future, a podcast where we adventure into the heart of creativity and innovation. I'm your host, Suki, coming to you from LA, joined by the fantastic team at Echo Bend. In this episode, we're embarking on a journey into a world where reality is only the beginning and the possibilities are as limitless as our imaginations. Our guide is none other than Allen Stevenson III, a luminary in extended reality and AI, affectionately dubbed as the Bob Ross of the Metaverse. With a brush, piano, and camera in one hand and the latest tech in the other, Don lives in an incredible world where AI, art, and technology merge to create experiences beyond our wildest dreams. From the stages of TED, MIT, and Cannes Lions, and so many more, Don shares his vision of a positive future through projects like Clear Mirror, a video series where he showcases the intersection of two or more technologies that don't currently exist yet and would contribute to human flourishing. Cutting his teeth at DreamWorks animation, he's now at the forefront of digital innovation, collaborating with giants like Meta, OpenAI, and Universal. But Don's story is also deeply rooted in the importance of balance, harmonizing health, finances, family, and community through organizing amazing events like tech-free summer camps for adults. His commitment to using his skills and empowerment and creativity isn't just inspiring. For me, it's a blueprint for how we can interact with the world around us and each other. I've had the pleasure of sharing the stage with him several times over the last year, and it is always a pleasure to dive into conversations with him where I always leave feeling inspired. Join me as we dive deep into the mind of a man reshaping our digital horizons, ensuring that as we explore new worlds, we remain anchored into what truly matters.
This idea that everything's been done before can be challenged.
I've been dreaming of a computer like this my whole life.
It really made me think more about how our brains work.
It's not coming from anywhere else. It's only coming from us.
Dear Future. Thank you for joining us, Don.
That was really kind. Oh my goodness. I'm so happy to be here.
It's so great to have you here. I really feel like so many of our conversations in the past have been sort of mediated by kind of presentation mode to others. And it's so nice to have a space where we can just go into what you've been thinking about, what you're working on, and like a much more, I don't know, just an interesting container to hear like what's happening in the mind of Don today.
Right. Yeah. Because like every other time that we've been chatting mostly has usually been like on a stage or something. So it'll be
Or
cool
at lunches.
Oh, yeah. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
So it'll be nice to have like a, one-to-one conversation, and I'm ready to, dive into anything.
Before we get into what you're doing today, I really love talking with you about your family and growing up in a space of science and how your parents' work as scientists shaped how you saw the world. And so with the lens of technology, I want to explore what was your earliest relationship to technology and innovation, and how did that influence your upbringing?
I think one of the earliest interactions with technology that I can remember was a computer, when I actually was able to use a computer before I could read. So I remember when the words on the screen were just characters. They didn't have meaning. It was like a 1994, like a early Windows machine. My dad got it the month that he learned about the internet. He got it. And then I was trying to play on that computer. And I think I broke that computer because I couldn't read the words that said it is now safe to turn off the computer.
Wow. And so your parents, though, also shaped kind of how you thought about experimentation. And I want to know a little bit about sort of the early shape of your childhood around experimenting and what you felt innovation was growing up.
So yeah, my dad, he's got a chemical engineering background. So we had actual microscopes in the garage that we would use. So a lot of times I'd go find something on a hike outside, like a little rock, and then come home and look under a nice microscope of that thing. And then he would teach me about the world that way. I had a magnifying glass, and I would learn how to use that. And there's a lot of science instruments just on this little workbench in our garage. And then my mom, she's not a science background, but she's a clinical social worker. And so she has really good emotional intelligence, EQ. And so she kind of helped balance not going too sciencey with things, but all, bringing back the humanity and things. So, between them, I feel like I really lucked out. I had a deep science brain and then a deep emotional brain, and those were my parents.
That's amazing. I can see it in the work you're doing today. And one of my sort of questions that I've been asking a lot of people is, what were the earliest indications of the kind of work you're doing today? What are your earliest memories of being curious about or playing with some of the themes you're dabbling in now?
Yeah, actually, I think it's a children's book that I was read to a lot, and it was my favorite children's book growing up, called Harold and the Purple Crayon. And the idea of it is Harold is this little character who has a magical purple crayon, and for every problem that he faces in his life, he can draw a solution to that problem. So if he's sinking in water, he would just draw a boat, and then all of a sudden he's floating. Or if he was hungry and he wanted to feed other forest animals, he would just draw food and then he could feed the moose that was hungry. And that book, I think for me, was probably the biggest influence. I saw myself as Harold in that piece. And even now today, working in augmented reality, where it's like I do create something and then it becomes physical or reality, or I make something and I 3D print it. For me, it feels like an extension of that Harold and the purple crayon. My purple crayon is maybe just like the digital equipment I would use, but I think that's like the most one-to-one I could think of.
Wow. It's so cool to feel how these like very whimsical childhood dreams manifest in these sort of adult containers. What are the different kinds of purple crayons you have? What are the different colors of the crayons that you wield today? What are the tools that you engage with? What are the genres that you play in? Just to give us a little bit of an understanding of the artistic world and technological worlds that you span.
The purple crayon is kind of probably has lots of different colors and shades now. And so I have some for like the 3D world. So that's using software like Cinema 4D and Substance Painter, Blender, Houdini, Maya. I actually like make music. So I play piano and drums and use like Reason Studios is one of the software I use for that. I've been using since I was in 6th grade. Another one is kind of illustration, using tools like Procreate, 3D modeling work in VR, using tools like Gravity Sketch and AR Core. I guess it really just depends on which crayons needed to be used. I had to learn all those tools when I was teaching at DreamWorks, I would teach all of our software to our artists. That was my job for like 3 years.
Wow. So it's literally been your path to learn and teach others.
Yeah.
Which is such a unique way of entering into these different artistic fields, much more as like the bringer of the tools. Like you're like bringing fire to all of the artists, being like, okay, here's how you can do this. How has your own artistic voice been shaped by using these different tools?
Oh, I mean, for now, like I feel like there's no barrier between me communicating something I see in my head and depicting it in a form that can be understood by others, because there's a tool for it. So if I want to visualize something, I can. If I want to create audio out of that, I can. And then now with 3D printing, you can feel the stuff, tangible. It could be tactile. There's no limitation. You can make anything in any medium. Maybe what I'm looking forward to is when we could just communicate through technology, almost telepathically, which I feel like is really, really close, way closer than I thought, where we could just send ideas, images, concepts, brain to brain.
That's so crazy. And I have so many questions about it. But before we get into the philosophical balloon of what does this mean for artistry, right, which I want to put a pin in.
Sure.
Like the idea of communicating telepathically one's like vaporous substance of an idea into someone else's mind or someone else's world, that is going to shift so many things in terms of how we think about creativity and how we value it. And I want to get into what that looks like with the tools you're using, with the projects you're working on. So can you tell me about some of the specific projects that you are working on, things that you're building? What is in your Mary Poppins bag?
Ooh, you got it. I mean, I have some stuff that I brought here. So
okay,
yeah, so this is like a shoe that I made.
Okay,
it's made out of PLA plastic.
So cool.
And I 3D printed it at home, and so I 3D modeled this by first scanning my foot. So I used the app Polycam to do a 3D scan of my foot. I then took that scan of the foot and then I scanned a shoe that actually fits me really comfortably, like Crocs. I actually scanned this Croc that I'm actually wearing today is the base mesh for that formation. So
let's see.
Yeah, so this is why I scanned my foot and I made sure that my foot scan could fit virtually into the shoe scan. And then once it did, I got rid of all the kind of things that I didn't like about the branding of the Crocs shoe.
Yeah.
And then started to 3D model my own forms. I used a program called Cinema 4D, and there's an algorithm called a Voronoi fracture.
For those who are not watching the video and just listening, it looks like a croc, and there's sort of all of these holes in it, almost like the way that a bird's nest, I would say, kind of looks, with these sort of holes in it, or sort of like the holes of a spider web. Looks like, yeah, basically like a melted croc with a bunch of interesting shapes all across it. And you can still see the sort of polygon footbed shape. Yeah. And it's hard plastic, but it's very robust. And so, one, why did you do this? And what was your creative process around it, right? We've heard about like sort of the technical, but how did you move from one problem to the other to arrive here?
The why I made this shoe was twofold. The first one is I'm aware of how fast AI is taking a lot of the technical skills required away from the process, and I have all this 3D knowledge, but I realize that there's a day very soon when AI will be able to kind of just do almost everything I do in 3D. You know, I normally would just render an image of this 3D shoe, and I would put a really cool light on it, and it would be a 2D image that you would see on a social media feed. That would normally be my output. But because AI is going to make it so that's super easy to replace, it's much harder for it to then become something someone can wear physically. So that was part of it. The other one is I have a friend who has a studio where they 3D print shoes. And I was so inspired. I was watching his printers go off and they were printing all these shoes. And I was like, I wonder how you do that. And so I went from just like that kind of curiosity of like, that was so cool. How do you do that? To, well, what can I use today to just start? I have a 3D printer, so how do I do that? And so I started thinking of what tools I have. I'm like, I have a phone that has a LiDAR scanner that emits points in space and can create 3D representations of a field. So I can probably scan my foot and then I'll scan a shoe that fits. And I think maybe that will give me a good start to, making a shoe.
Does the shoe fit?
It does. Yeah. It fits perfectly.
I'm curious, before we move on to the next item in your Mary Poppins bag, when encountering problems that you are currently unequipped with the knowledge to answer or to solve, how do you think about solving problems creatively and scientifically when you encounter those challenges that you've never encountered before?
YouTube's been really great. I ask a lot of questions all the time, and I don't assume I know anything. So when I hit a wall, like I usually would just go to YouTube. That used to be like my default. Now I go to Perplexity AI and I ask in there. It's one of those tools that it's an AI assistant kind of thing. You can type in a query and now it like does a bunch of web searches and it provides YouTube videos. So that's even expedited that whole process, starting with, I don't know how to do blank. And then the internet, it's the internet. They'll like take you from knowing nothing to you could be competent. I've never been shy to show a first draft. Like my first 3D tutorials were garbage. I keep them up there. They're still up there deep on the Instagram feed. When I was just learning how to set up a light in 3D or how to add an object to a scene.
Right.
I didn't know any of that.
Right.
But like just kind of periodically just asking the question, there's so many tutorials now on every software. You can learn anything if you just ask.
It's so interesting too, because I and many others that I know have a kind of love-hate relationship with social media. And really from the perspective of like a creative in today's world, a lot of the ways in which creatives kind of represent themselves, you seem to have such a healthy relationship to learning and teaching and sharing yourself online in a way that feels almost like a fluid expression, a very natural and organic expression of who you are. How have you been able to sort of maintain that kind of, I would say almost, maybe I'm wrong, but it feels almost like a purity in your relationship with social media as a creative putting work out? What has that been like for you?
The process of making it pure?
No, or just like having a solid, good, pure relationship with social media as a way that you just express yourself very naturally. Like, do you get caught up in the numbers game or the sort of doubt and insecurity that can come from Instagram and those kinds of things that creatives feel? Or is that not a part of your reality?
It's not too much a part of my reality. Maybe a little bit more now as like numbers grow, they start to matter to certain brands. But before this moment, like, before like the last 2 years, I was initially just making it for me. I wanted to learn how to do stuff. And for me, when I teach how to do something, I actually learn how to do it much, much better.
So it's a tool for learning.
Yeah. And I would just live stream me learning. People, when they scroll through your feed, they actually get a quick assessment of your authenticity when they scroll a few times. And when they see that you used to be terrible at this, but you shared your stuff then, and then you kept doing it, now you improved. In my mind, that's actually how I hire people, is I look at the improvement change. Have they changed a lot from where they were a year ago? I don't like seeing just perfect work. It's just like, you were always this good? No way. You had to learn somewhere around this. When did you learn? And you're like, no, I don't learn. I was perfect all the time. And for me, that's like major, red flags. So for me, like, I'm going to go against the norm of saying, don't share your, only share your best work. No, you should, in my mind, you should share all the flaws, like your iterations. How did you improve on that really terrible 3D model that you did back in 2015?
Did you get better?
Did you get better? Because if you did, then I can understand where would you be 5-10 years from now? Showing this improvement rate. That's more inspiring to me.
It's so interesting because I really feel like a lot of the skills that are becoming really important to this day and age are those that are contributing to, or I would say, reflective of lifelong learning and change management. And I want to explore what you are learning now and how you are managing change now through another item in your Mary Poppins bag.
You got it.
What's another gadget or gizmo that you are playing with right now? And how are you managing the changes that are coming about through that technology maybe? And what are you learning about with that gadget or gizmo?
I got some exciting gadget.
It's here.
This is an Apple Vision Pro.
Here it is.
And I know a lot of people are using it for vanity right now, but I want to first put a disclaimer that you can actually create and do a lot of cool stuff, like create things that you can never create before and design things you've never been able to design before with it. So this is one of those tools that I've been dreaming of a computer like this my whole life, ever since I've been getting into like augmented reality.
Yeah.
And the reason why I've been dreaming of this is multiple reasons, but one of them is it's a computer that kind of can like live anywhere. So in this box, they have a battery and a wire that's attached, and then they have a headset and it has a cover on it. But yeah, so in this device, like you can animate in the air. You can draw in the air and animate. You can 3D model in here. You can build things by pinching gestures. So I made a robot character that I animated in Cinema 4D, gave it bones so it can move, and then I have its eyes animated so the eyes look around, and this thing tracks to my hand. So as I move my hand, it's a little floating drone robot with a cute little face.
So cute.
And it sticks around. And so I can use that as like a vehicle, a vessel for doing storytelling. So in the video I did this week, I'm talking to the character and my wife was pretending to be the voice of the character as if it was responding back. And we made a short film just in the air, and it was all filmed with these cameras right in the Vision Pro. All the lighting is adjusting correctly on the 3D model. So all these lights that were here in this room, for example, they would be reflected on my character at the same time as me moving it around. This brings like VFX immediately. You can do them as you're filming.
Like real-time engagement with characters.
Yes.
Why do you care about this? Why is this so important to you?
Well, for me, it's to help deal with the volume of content that's going to be needed for people to like care about stories moving forward in the future. I think if it takes people too long to get a story out, maybe a lot of the mass market may not care about it at all. They've already moved on by the time you finished. So for me, it's like being able to tell stories in the go. I don't write like the stories out very much. I kind of just improvise.
Yeah.
And so it'd be so much easier for me to be able to improvise on the spot and also be doing the VFX on the spot and being able to write it on the spot. Normally, I have to pretend like I'm seeing something there when I record the Clear Mirror episodes.
Right.
And then I later go and 3D track all the frames. And then I take that data and send it to my 3D program and reconstruct all the shadows and all the lighting. And then I have to 3D mock up the character. There's like just hours and hours and hours of work for me to have characters to talk, to interact with. Whereas now if I make them up front, make the character in the beginning and then just bring it in as an asset, it's suddenly there.
Wow. And so in the work that you're making with Clear Mirror, let's start with why you started the series. How does Clear Mirror reflect your perspective on the world, your philosophy, your emotional orientation towards these tools? And yeah, why are you making it?
I'm making it because I want people to have more hope for the future. I made it in response to Black Mirror. Black Mirror is a very good show at showing technologies and future, but it's always how humans and tech have the worst relationship together in the future. That's like the reoccurring theme. So I made Clear Mirror to have humans and technology in the future with a healthier relationship. So the goal of Clear Mirror is to have a conversation starter or an anchor that people can reference. And I encourage people to, like, when they see positive tech out there, to call it Clear Mirror just so I can see it and be like, oh my God, that's a great use of tech. Okay, yes, let's see more of this. Versus right now, you see a tech announcement and then there's a lot of Black Mirror language underneath it, like saying like, oh, this is so Black Mirror. And I wanted to be a Clear Mirror because I want it to be a transparent relationship with technology. You can see through like a clear piece of glass, but also you can still see yourself in it.
What are the kinds of things you're making with it?
Yeah, so I made a concept where you go into a grocery store and you're about to buy something, and imagine your vision, your glasses sees what you're seeing and can inform you about the product that you're about to consume before you consume it, before you even purchased it. So I hold up a box of Cheez-Its and said, oh, I love Cheez-Its. I should get these. And then an AI agent that can see from me says, heads up, this actually has hazardous amount of additives into it. In fact, it has this one additive that is known to make it harder for you to metabolize a lot of like food. And oh, what is that? And then as you're asking it questions, it's conjuring up realities. It's showing you close up of the Cheez-It and saying that this is where the additives are, here's what they are, here's what their known side effects are. And then you can make a more informed decision before consuming it because you see that, and maybe that's a personal preference. So maybe for my glasses, I would want it to do that. But I would love in the future, it's more custom. So maybe someone doesn't want to be reminded every time they eat Cheez-Its that they should be like, no.
They're like, no, I want Cheez-Its. Let me have Cheez-Its.
Right. Like, I think everyone should have a preference. I think that's the whole future models. Everyone's computing will be like a personalized experience.
So Speaking of all of the recreational activities that are really important to work-life balance, are there other examples of things you want to show just for me to keep in mind? What else you got in your beautiful fanny pack? For listeners, there's an incredibly cute pink fanny pack that is fabulous. What is this? There's these Meta Ray-Bans. Is this what this is?
Yeah.
Meta Ray-Bans.
So these are the
I'm
Ray-Ban.
going to put them over my glasses. It's going to look really cute.
Yeah, give it a go.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah. So you hear audio playing.
You hear audio playing and it goes battery 100%. Wow, that's so interesting. And beeping. Do you hear it too?
No, I can't hear it. But I'm familiar with it from putting it on. So
Yeah. But what? So nobody can hear around you?
They can if they're like a foot away from you.
But not like 2 feet.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Oh, you just took a picture.
I did.
Yeah, there's a shutter
there's a
button on the
button.
top right.
Okay, now you got a picture of you.
Oh, yeah. I'll get a video of you. Recording a video of you now. You'll see a white
Wow.
light. So that's like how you know I'm recording.
That's amazing.
If I cover the white light, it will stop recording.
Oh, for privacy. That's cool. What do you use these glasses for?
First person point of view camera work. It's like the best camera. It's a vertical video. It shoots a vertical video only. It does not shoot wide.
Oh.
Yeah, it's mostly for like that reel format, that TikTok format, this YouTube Shorts format.
Yeah.
And it's a very high quality camera. I would say it's about an iPhone 11
Wow.
in terms of video and photo. I still use these when I want like first person look. So it's a really good tool for like that kind of footage. It also has like microphones in here. It's 5 mics and it's extremely directional. And when you listen back to audio that's recorded on this with headphones, it really, you know exactly where audio is coming from in the room. It's very clear, like someone making a rustling sound over there or a chuckle over there. It's the most directional audio I've ever played back afterwards. Because like normal phones, they have maybe 1 or 2 mics.
Yeah.
But when there's 5 mics and it knows the distance of your head
Yeah.
as, you know, being interfering with that,
Right.
it's very good audio.
Okay.
But yeah, that's about all the,
All the gadgets and gizmos?
that's all the gadgets.
Okay, so with this spread of gadgets and gizmos that you use every day, how would you describe this era of creativity to your younger self?
I would tell my younger self that you'll soon be able to do entire studio work by yourself. You may not need a studio to do whatever creative idea you had. You'll have tools that you could do the whole pipeline by yourself and it would look good.
And what do you think, projecting into the future now, what do you think the impact of this kind of technological advancement and also just ease of creating, what do you think this is going to do to our brains and also to younger generations that are coming up as artists that are going to be AI natives?
I mean, to our brains, I think it's going to make us really impatient with anything that's not immediately gratifying. So that's the one negative side. I don't like slow production anymore because in my mind, I should be able to just puppeteer it right now with my headset. And then I should have a video that's ready to go online as soon as it's done being recorded.
Wow.
So that's kind of maybe reduced my level of patience with, you know, if someone says the VFX pipeline is going to take a week, I would say, no, it's not. They should be able to be done as we're recording.
Wow.
So it might just they might have this expectation that things should just be done instantly.
Yeah.
And then it will become so normal so fast that it won't even feel like it's fast. It'll just feel like it's slow again. The Apple Vision Pro will help people create realities and then share realities very easily. And I think as soon as you make a medium very easy to transfer and receive, it becomes a new language. So I think reality creation will become a language, kind of like how we use memes.
Right.
It became so easy to transmit images to anybody that we can have new meaning assigned to them that was not even decided by the original creator of that image. But because we can transfer it so quickly, it's a language. So memes are a language because of that transferability. I think this is going to make it, you know, for my future self, much easier to make full realities, characters, audio, visual, probably multisensory experiences. And it might become so easy to create these realities that reality creation itself will be a language that we share as much as memes. You know Clippy?
Yeah.
So imagine if Clippy was like volumetric and 3D and felt as real as this phone between us right now.
It's like Clippy's grandson.
Yeah. So Clippy's grandson. And like, if you could talk to Clippy,
Yeah.
and I trained Clippy to be really skilled at a certain narrow task. And I send Clippy to you almost like how I would send it like a GIF or a GIF. And like, how funny is this moment?
Yeah.
But it might have like intelligence on board. It would probably not just be like an image or a 3D model like I currently would send. It might have a little bit of like tiny bit of awareness.
Yeah. It's like, yo, bro, do you like this joke?
Yeah.
And then you could say it and be like, all right, I'll work on it.
I seriously think that's going to happen.
Wow. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of considerations in terms of preparing for that reality.
Yeah.
And this is something that I brought up with a few other people I've had on the show is it can feel like there's a lot of thrash. Like, right, there's a lot of possibilities that are almost moving so quickly. How do you maintain a sense of groundedness in this moment of so much change? What do you do to recharge, to reconnect, to put your feet on the ground while the world feels like it's moving so fast?
Rescue dogs. Get rescue dogs. We got rescue dogs at our house, and they need to be taken outside all the time, every day, multiple times a day. That has been my secret hack to like being deep in these reality creations and AI stuff. Oh, but my dogs have to go outside every 3 hours. You got options. You can either go outside regularly and enjoy the sun, the air, and the rain that's out there, or poop in the house.
Right.
Those are your options. Right. So you get rescue dogs, and they will force you out unless you don't mind the poop everywhere.
Right. And then, it's just everything's shitty.
Yeah, exactly. I seriously think like super practical, freaking rescue 2 dogs.
Yeah.
So that if you have to be away, they hang out with each other and they're besties.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's the right thing to do. There's a lot of dogs in shelters. It'd be so cool if you could get them. And then, yeah, it keeps me grounded. So like, I kid you not, when I start getting overwhelmed by all this news, because I still do get overwhelmed from like scrolling through different feeds and learning about all these new things that are popping up. And I'm stressing out. And then my dog jumps on my leg and it's like, hey, let's go outside. Oh, yes, you're right. Mm-hmm. Thank you. We'll go outside now. And I'll just walk for hours with them every day. So like even after our podcast and you were talking about all sorts of crazy, cool realities, I'll probably need to reground myself, and I'm going to give the dogs a super long walk in the park and thank them for helping keeping me grounded.
Something that you do that really inspires me is this summer camp where you really focus on this philosophical idea of ikigai that is very connected to my own interests around wabi-sabi and ikebana, which is Japanese flower arranging. And I would just love to hear about, outside of just taking dogs for a walk, like what are these experiences that you're currently designing? You've done one already, and you're designing one for this next year, I think.
Yes.
That help other people also have that same experience and explore purpose at the same time.
Yeah, so I call them camp future proofs. And because I think a big part of future proofing now is including ikigai. Mm-hmm. That's like the intersection of those 4 circles. Mm-hmm. So we got first circle being what you love. Another one is what you're good at. Another one is what the world needs. And last one is what you can be paid for.
And what is ikigai, just as a concept?
It means reason for being. And I think it's something that's going to start to challenge a lot of people very quickly, because I know for me, when I used to live in Silicon Valley, I used to mostly value my existence off of what work I did. Not very healthy and not very holistic. It was in my mind, it's like 1/4 of the equation.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was taking up 100% of the equation. So that meant if I lost my job or something, I would be devastated because my reason for being was work. So since I think, AI is going to, do a lot of scary things and cool things and everything in between, if people's identity is just tied to their work, it's going to get really disrupted very soon. So the idea of ikigai is kind of having your reason for being not just be your work, but also including what you love doing, what brings you joy, what the world needs, and like what you're good at. Mm-hmm. Adding all these other dimensions, I think, makes it more future-proof. Then your identity is more future-proof. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be devastated if you lose your job, because what if you have the other 3? Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness, you have 75% of everything, even if you didn't have a job. So with Camp Future Proof, had it in Santa Cruz Mountains last year in June, and I had a bunch of people. I had about 20 people come. Some people flew in from different countries. People drove in from different states. And we essentially focused on ikigai for like 2 nights in the camp. We had a really cool campground and a log cabin, separate cabins for everybody. And we had food, and we had incredible sound baths and meditation. We had a workbook that we focused on filling out throughout the few days. And had activities that help. Our whole goal was helping people find their ikigai throughout the activities. And so we'd like walk up a hill together that was like really challenging. And then at the top, we all would spend like 15 minutes in silence journaling. And then afterwards, we'd all come in a circle and reflect together around what did we just learn about ourselves. And the amount of like connection that we all felt with each other after having these shared activities and experiences, I cried, they cried, we all cried, and it felt good. I chose a spot with the worst Wi-Fi possible to dissuade myself and my very usually tech-focused group from doing that. We had to engage with each other. I chose the mountains in a spot that if you're bored, well, there's humans around. So it was also to address the epidemic of loneliness that we're facing, where people are spending more and more time in isolation away from each other, especially after a pandemic. It's gotten worse. So the idea is bringing humans together in these shared activities, having in-person, face-to-face interaction, while also learning about your purpose beyond just your work. That was the whole focus. And it's like totally opposite of all the stuff I'm showing here, which is very technology. And I guess this is what I do for a living, but I only can do it because I'm also balancing the long term, which for me is more of that community building. And I would love to not just have one event a year. I would like to have future-proof days where they're just single things. And this year is going to be more around service. I'm not particularly religious, so that's not really the angle I'm coming from, but I would like us to focus more on what the world needs out of the 4 circles. I think we focused a lot on the other 2 circles of Ikigai last year, and this one would be more on adding more of that, what does the world need? And so I was thinking, still workshopping this with my team, we're going to do like a beach cleanup as part of the day. So like we're gathering together as a community, we're having meals together, we're reflecting, but then we're also going to go and like do something in a real physical community as a service. And if that could become a culture, then I wouldn't be as concerned when AI kind of continues to expand, because our whole identities wouldn't just be tied up in what we do for work.
And also what we're getting from the world. It's also based on what we're giving.
Yeah, I think it's a very scalable model because everyone I know so far lives at least near a community. And like that's already a huge start. And the isolation that we experience, I think, is more of a construct in our head. And like it can be broken down over time if we give ourselves like a chance to socialize again. I was overwhelmingly crying at the event the last day, like when we were like wrapping up. I was not expecting that. I was like sobbing. I could barely talk. I was just like, I love you guys so much. Thank you for coming to Camp Future. You have no idea how much this means to me. I did not know. I had like so much emotion that I think had been like suppressed. It just felt so good. Like 2 people flew out from London to come to California. We had folks come from Hungary.
Wow.
And it was just like, you came out here to reconnect with people. Like that's how much this is needed.
Yeah.
I only knew a lot of them from their icons on Instagram, their faces on Instagram, and some of them just have their artwork as their Instagram image.
Right.
So I only knew them from their artwork.
From their avatars.
From their avatar. Their 2D representation of an avatar is all I knew a lot of them from who came, which was such a trip because like I've talked to a lot of them in the DMs for years.
Yeah.
And then you see them in person, you're like, oh my God, you're a person?
Yeah, you're not a little blob in a box. You are like a full flesh and blood experience.
And hugs, you've never felt a hug through like an avatar.
Yeah.
Yet.
Yeah.
Maybe in the future with like haptics and stuff. But for now, it was like, oh my God, I recognize you from that's your same name. Oh my God, hug.
Yeah.
And like you feel like the warmth and it's a person, whereas they're not just a screen anymore. They're not just characters and digits on a screen. So I definitely want more of those.
I feel the same. One of the things that you and I share is like a love of, I think, community and desiring doing things together to solve problems. And one of the things that I experienced when I first met you is also your desire for impact and like really thinking about how you are designing the future yourself, how you are responsible for the future. And you told me the story of how you went to this event around AI and how you saw this list of all the possible consequences, the negative consequences of the impact of AI. And you told me that you were then inspired to make a list around combating each one of those different potential bad outcomes. And I wanted to ask, where are you with that list right now?
Sure. So the list was at a talk called The AI Dilemma. And on the list was like all these possible ways this is going to go seriously wrong. And there was like reality collapse and fake automated cyber attacks and auto-generated hate and like all these kind of things. For me, I was like, okay, this is like a checklist. Like how can I build with existing tools to do the opposite of all these problems? And one of them was being more human and authentic, which helped trigger the Camp Future Proofs. I'm like, okay, well, it's really hard to do fake cyber attacks if you know people in person. Very hard to do that. How do we deal with fake relationships? What if people had relationships that were real? Okay, check. And then I just kind of went down the list. I was surprised that the room wasn't realizing that a lot of the solutions are like kind of going, in some ways, going back to very basics for a lot of their problems. All their problems were predicated on this assumption that we remain the same society and that we don't have like any collective changes. But I think we could mitigate a lot of the harms if we adopted a slightly different society that kind of goes back to small community vibes.
It's so interesting how it all goes back to tribe. These like small, intentional communities of people coming together to create something. The thing that I also fucking love about your story is that I think I share a kind of history with like adversity and seeing adversity as an opportunity. And I think that you are such an example of someone that takes adversity and takes challenge, even like physical limitations, and turns them into an asset and an opportunity. And so this is such a short amount of time that we have, but I'd love to hear more about how you've experienced physical limitations that then brought you into a space of innovation and creativity and seeing those challenges as opportunities.
For me, like I have like an invisible disability. I have chronic nerve pain in the whole left half of my body. I have it right now. I have it yesterday. I've had it like the last 16, 17 years. And so I can't use my left arm for very long without having a lot of pain. And it's just kind of firing, shooting pain kind of all the time. I was told that people who have my condition, which I think was like syringomelia of the spine, are supposed to be really miserable, depressed, and they're supposed to be very unhappy lives. Everything I've read about this condition and people who have it has been very depressing. Yeah. So I decided that I'm not going to let that be the case because I can't control the pain, but I can control how I interpret it. And I know that my pain goes up when I'm not taking care of myself. Mm-hmm. So if I'm choosing not to sleep, or if I choose to eat like garbage, or if I choose to be super stressed, I get more nerve pain. So I'm actually grateful for the pain because it's almost like a barometer. And it says, oh, you want more pain? Go ahead. Don't sleep tonight. Right. Watch what happens.
Right.
So then I'm like, okay, you're right, pain. Okay, I'll go to sleep. So in my mind, like I just had to flip in my head what the pain means, because before I was like, why me? This sucks. And I got worse. My pain went up significantly. But the moment I was like, you know what? What if this pain, what if it's just saying go to sleep?
What if it's just a messenger? Bleep, bleep.
Yeah. And I still feel the pain.
Yeah.
It's very real. Yeah. And I make light of it now. But I do contextually, though, I've had to change my mind about what the signals mean.
How do you work through it when it's hard?
It's usually the same things with the dogs, going outside, physical movement, gratitude exercises. That's a fun one. I'll just go outside or like speak out loud, like 3 things I'm very grateful for in this moment. And then it's hard for me to be super grateful and then also experience the fullness of the pain. They're opposite. So I can just like, what am I grateful? Oh, it's really nice outside right now. And the water in that river is running and it's beautiful. And I have my dogs with me and they got me outside. Pain's not so bad. I can manage this. When it gets really bad, I do have to go back to the hospital. But it's been a while since that happened.
For anyone who is also struggling maybe with invisible disabilities like this, do you have any advice, any thoughts? And let's just say, actually, we'll widen the field. Whether it's those who are struggling with experiences that are really hard to manage and like having to deal with sort of physical ailments or emotional ailments that are sort of keeping them down, or even, let's say, fears, crippling fear of the future. What kind of advice would you give them in this moment for what to be hopeful of in the future?
Well, in the future, I think we'll be able to mitigate and lessen a lot of the physical pains from new medicine, custom medicine that's more tailored to individuals. If you have chronic nerve pain like me, they don't recommend at first the TENS unit. It's a type of device with electrodes. That has been one of the easiest ways to mitigate the pain that is not a lot of medicine and narcotics and drugs. And you can order them on Amazon. And every time I go to the hospital, all they would suggest was just more drugs. I don't take them. I said, no, do you have anything else? They're like, no, we just have drugs. I'm like, great. That's not very helpful.
You're like, thanks, bro. Something else?
Yeah. And so my mom, luckily, has been an advocate for me. She works in the hospital system. And she was the one who brought up to the doctors, what about a TENS unit? It's a non-invasive skin electrodes you put on, and then you turn dials to change the frequency of electric shocks and the rate. You can change the wavelength. And it's almost like a tuning fork. And if I tune the knobs to the right setting, it can significantly and instantly change my pain response to not receive that pain for a little bit. Wow. Doesn't heal you, doesn't fix anything. But when my pain's very high, having a TENS unit, it's like my last trick before, having to go for more serious help. I try not to use it every day because it works so well. I want to get used to trying to manage the pain without it. But if I was honest with how much pain I'm in, I would probably be wearing it every day, all the time. Yeah. The wires do get in the way and they get tangled. And that's always kind of fun. If you fall asleep with them, you'll get like a nasty shock or something.
Oh, God.
Not a horrible shock. I guess use comedy as my approach to dealing with nerve pain.
Yeah.
Is is taking a comedic lens, watch a lot of funny videos.
Yeah.
And that also helps lower my pain response. They never suggested going to a comedy show.
Yeah.
That's a great way to mitigate pain. You can't be in pain when you're laughing.
That's great.
I was like, the doctor, like there's so many practical things. TENS units, comedy shows, funny videos online. None of that was suggested. Oh, I also do acupuncture.
Oh, great.
Acupuncture helps. It usually helps during, but then as soon as all the needles are out, then I'm back to kind of my nerve problem.
Yeah.
But it's nice
For the
break.
moment.
Yeah, it's a nice relief.
That's great. I
Yeah.
think there's so many people who struggle with this, and I think you're a really awesome advocate for all of that. So thanks for taking the time to share about it.
Happy to share.
Yeah. Is there anything else before we wrap up?
I would love to know more about what you've been doing, but I guess this is your podcast where you learn about other people and stuff.
Yeah. I'll just be on your podcast.
Okay.
And then we'll just trade questions.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you again for being on the show. Such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap on today's journey into the future with the incredibly insightful Don Allen III. From the digital brushstrokes of the metaverse to the vast possibilities of XR and AI and VR, Don has not only painted a vivid picture of what's on the horizon, but also reminded us of the importance of keeping our human values at the heart of innovation. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show and hearing about how we can navigate these spaces between technology and art and change with intention and purpose. To our listeners, we hope today's episode leaves you inspired to explore, create, and perhaps even redefine the boundaries of your own creative expression, because the future isn't something we arrive at. It is a bridge we are building as we traverse it. Let's take Don's insights as a spark to ignite our own explorations into the unknown. This is Suki, signing off, but always looking ahead. Keep dreaming. We'll see you in the future.
Dear Future.